Welcome back to the Backyard Professor Rough Country Survival videos. Today I promised I was going to make a step-by-step instruction on how to do the bow drill fire making method, and it is a cool method. It's impressive. The real advantage is it gives us a mechanical advantage, which is pure bonus if that's the method you have to be able to use to build a fire to get warmth, purify your water, etc. There's no better method. And the mechanical advantage is huge. It's why it's so popular. Besides, it's cool. It really is. I mean, there's no other way I can explain this. It's a cool method. A lot of us want to know how to do this. How many of us, by the raise of hands, notice I'm raising my hand, have tried this before in our life? As scouts, probably, realistically. Even our scout leaders couldn't do it, but they showed us those chintzy pre-made kits and how to do it, and then told us to go practice. They tried it a few times, maybe got some smoke, but never took it to an ember. So we never learned it. We just basically got the smoke, which doesn't mean you have the ember, but it does mean you're on the right track. But then we failed, and we said, well, someday we'll do it. Well, that day has arrived. I'm going to give you a step-by-step instruction. I'm going to show you my equipment, and then we're going to get right on this. Now, it's going to take me a few minutes. For those of you who have the disease of impatience and you want the answer in 30 seconds, sorry, this video isn't for you. I'm not going to take very long, just a few minutes. I want to show you how I've been practicing. I'm going to give you the most practical, easy method to be able to do this. It's a method I came up with, and it worked. A grand accumulated time of less than half an hour, and I got my first ember. The first time I tried this, you guys, I couldn't even get smoke. Really, I'm serious. But it's just a simple step-by-step process for just maybe 3 to 5 minutes a day for 3 to 4 days. It's so simple, it's silly. So let me show you my equipment, and then we'll get on with showing you step by step how to do this really cool technique. Alright, I've assembled all my pieces here on my table saw. These are the hearthwood practice pieces that I've used. You can see that you can just use basically a tree branch. And then you have to flatten the one side. You can see that side is flattened. And then, yeah, it's flattened there. And then from the top, you just drill down a hole. And here are some of the boards. That's an alder board. These two are cedar boards. The recommendation, you can see there's several different practice holes in them. The recommendation, which I think is a very good one, is to start with the cedar. And then there's my handheld block with the bearing in it, which I think is spectacular. I got that idea from David West in his channel. Shout out to David West. Then there are several of my different spindles. I have different woods. That's the Quakey spindle there. This is the cedar. This one's pine. Notice how my pine one is now misshapen. It's kind of bent because I've used it so much. It's warped. It's no longer usable. It sucks. I was going to use it today. And then this is another pine here, and then this is my oak piece. A hardwood that they say makes it much harder, and I don't find that to be the case at all. But notice I have scratched in the surface of that hardwood so that the cord can grip it better. That's a good idea to do. And then my various bows. I have my long bow, my medium bow, and my short bow. Baby bow, mama bow, and papa bow. And I'll show you the advantages and disadvantages of each one of those. So let's get on with this and show you how to make one of these. Let's start with the bows first. This is my short bow. It's basically a cubit. It's from my fingertip to my elbow. From my fingertip to my elbow. The only reason I made one of these is to see if I could make it work, and I can. I've gotten a few embers with this one. In case you're confined to a tight area, a little bow really works. The trouble is, the upside is you don't need as much cord. The downside is you need to really saw it back and forth much faster to make the frictional buildup to give you the right amount of heat to ignite the ember. And that's why we recommend softwoods first. Softwoods with your spindles and your hearthwood, because the ignition point of most softwoods is between 200 and 390 degrees. To give you a comparison, oak, the hardwood, has a 900 degree ignition point. So it's presumably much, much harder to use the hardwoods than it is to use the softwoods. So we're going to give ourselves a chance to learn this skill and to practice this skill, so just go with softwoods. And you can make this out of any kind of branch. This is just a quake and aspen branch. And you notice I have the Y on it, the little Y, and I just simply tied the cord to this side, and I leave the end off. Some people like to tie off both ends. I don't. You can just wrap this around. You do a groove. See that groove in there? I carved a groove in it so that you can put the cord in the groove and wrap the cord around, and there's your bow drill. Right? There's your bow drill. And you just hold it in your hand like that. And then we'll twist the spindle inside of the cord. The downside of this is it is a lot more work to get an ember. But if you're in a tight concealed spot, the baby bow works good and it uses less cord. You'll notice that putting it on this little notch out here, this little branch, this Y, gives me a little bit of a gap, but the bow itself is straight. You want a fairly sturdy bow because you're going to be applying pressure back and forth as you drill the spindle. And you don't want a bow that's going to be flexing off and on because it'll loosen up the cord around the spindle, right? So you want a pretty stout bow drill. My favorite bow drill at this point, and again, I've got it notched in both ends. There's a notch and there's a notch, and it's just a straight branch. You do not need a gigantic curve in your bow. You want a stout bow. You can use a dowel, truly. This is just simply a straight stick off of a quake and aspen tree. And then the cord, I have done dozens and dozens of embers with this. The middle one goes from your fingertip to your armpit. My small one went from fingertip to elbow. The middle one, the one they recommend the most, is from your fingertip to your armpit in length. That works really good. You can be comfortable with it. It's easy to use. This is my longbow. It's so long I can't even get it back here long enough to show you. It goes from my fingertip to my pectoral. The disadvantage of the longbow is it's a little more awkward to use. You'll see that this one has a slight bend in it. It doesn't matter. See, there's a little bit of a gap between the bow and the cord. It could have been straight, but I got this off my lilac bush out back in the back here. And it's stout. I cut it green. It's probably more stout than it needs to be. The advantage of the longbow is you have a lot more length to saw back and forth and back and forth on the spindle, which means it's spinning for a longer time, which means it's generating a lot more heat, and which means you can get an ember faster, easier with the real long bow. The downside of it is it does take more cord, and it takes a little bit more practice because you have to keep the bow level to the ground as you're moving it back and forth. And I'll show you all of that in detail here in just a couple of minutes, okay? Now, for the cord, and I know the primitivists love to do their own cording in the wild, which I think is cool, and I am working on, and I'm practicing. You know, they use tree roots or sagebrush bark or whatever. Right now, we are interested in just learning how to do this and practicing it. So I have gotten Paracord 550. That's what this is. I have worked the heck out of this Paracord 550 for dozens and dozens of embers. I have been doing my experiments with the different types of wood types in the spindles and the hardwood and the hardwoods and the baseboards, the hearth boards. This isn't even fraying yet. It still looks brand new. Paracord 550. That's the end of the discussion. There is no debate here. Do not rely on your leather bootlaces out in the wild. They are not true leather. They're chintzy. They fray fast. They'll break. Forget it. Get some Paracord 550. It's cheap. $9 for like 100 feet. And then just wrap it around your waist in your belt loops 6 or 7 times before you go out, and you know you've got a lot of cord to use. Wrap them around each one of your boots 5 or 6 or 7 times. That way you know you have extra cording, and this stuff takes a beating, and it just keeps right on going. I love paracord. Do it. Just give ourselves a chance to get experienced with this. The next item I have is my handheld block. Now mine is fairly large and fairly thick and somewhat awkward, but for me it gives me better stability. The feature I want to show you is this bearing. I got this from David West. I love this idea. I take this with me everywhere I go. If I need to do a bow drill, I'm going to use this. Usually you can either get a rock that has an indentation in it and then put some green leaves in there, because this is going to hold down the spindle, and I'll show you that. So you don't want friction up here, you want it down there on the hearthwood. Or sometimes it's just another piece of wood that you do a divot in. The advantage of the bearing is, see that hole? That actually, let me grab my spindle. Here's my Quakey spindle. That hole actually holds in the spindle. And then the spindle spins, and there's literally no friction. It's so spectacular and easy to use. It helps you hold the spindle. It keeps it in. I love this idea of that bearing. They're only like $8 at a bearing shop or a hardware shop. I did a drill bit, and I drilled down the wood, and then I put the bearing, I drilled it down about 1/8 of an inch, then I put the bearing in there. You do not want to glue the entire bearing in. This middle part has to remain free and spinning, so don't glue the whole bearing in. Just seat it in the hole, and then I took JB weld and weld along the outside edge of the bearing so that the inside edge continues to rotate. And that's what your spindle will spin in while you're holding it. Fabulous idea. And then your spindles, and I've got various different kinds of spindles. I saw a video where some guy said that the thicker, broader around spindles are very much harder to use than the skinnier spindles, right? With the bow drill, I don't know if that's that big of a significant difference. I personally have not noticed much of a difference because the mechanical advantage of the bow drill is so fabulously strong for us. Size of spindles don't really matter. The general rule of thumb is stretch your little finger out, stretch your thumb out, and that's about how long you want a spindle. For me personally, I like to add a couple of inches to that length, right? I have seen guys use 2-foot long spindles. It all depends on your body type. Everyone's body is different. Everyone's length of legs, your length of arms, etc. is different. So you get to experiment and find out what size spindle is best for you. I personally have found that to be a good rule of thumb. Truly. All of my spindles are more or less that way. And I've got different types, wood types. The cedar spindle, that smells good when you're making it. The pine spindle, that smells good, although I need to make a new one because that one's warped and that won't spin very good anymore. And then the quakey spindle, those work real good. And then I've got another pine spindle and an oak spindle. I actually found with my oak spindle that I can generate a Ember faster, which is really interesting. And then you can just take a branch, you come up about 6 inches or so, cut a cross cut, not all the way through, just down about maybe a quarter of an inch, half of an inch, and then take your hatchet on end and splice that away. And then I'll show you how to do this on a flat board. And what we're going to use is we are going to use a piece of just regular cedar flat board to do our process, because the cedar is the softest softwood. It really makes a great ember. It's easy to practice with. You want to practice, and we want to be able to do this, and we want to be able to play with it, right? So let's keep it simple, stupid, the KISS principle, and let's just take our time, step at a time, and enjoy ourselves with this, okay? So that's what we're going to do. So I'm going to set this up, and I'm going to show you my technique first for getting used to this. Then we'll go ahead and take this stuff to an ember. It's, quite frankly, simple. You don't always get an ember the first time. So what? You stand up, walk around for a minute, take a break, and then go back down and try it again. So what? Not a big deal. Okay. The first thing you want to do is make a divot. Just buy a cedar rail fence or a cedar board at your local hardware store. We want to practice this so that we can have fun with it. You don't want it in the middle because you see these with notches in them. This broke out. That's one of the hazards of this. Sometimes it'll break out and you have to start over. But see the different notches in these? That's the second step. We're going to do this in a 2-step process. First, you want to make a divot in this board. Now, let's take our pine spindle. You don't want this directly on the edge because you want this inside a little bit. You need a little bit of meat on the edge, just like that hole right there. See that little edge right there? That's the length, that's the width you want. You don't want it directly on the edge, you want it here. But you can use your spindle to measure where on the board to put your divot. And then you just make a divot. You press down, you turn your blade, you make a little divot in the wood. That's all you do. This is the first step. Make your divot, shake it out. There you go. Now let's check our spindle, make sure it'll stay in the divot. You don't need to go real deep. Just make a divot. This first step is called the burn in. Okay, so that's going to stay there. We can see that that's going to stay there in that divot. Good, that's excellent. That's what we want. Okay, let's go to the next step. See, so far a piece of cake, I promise. Okay, this next step, we're going to take our bow drill. And you don't need to have it super tight. You don't want it super tight because we're going to intertwine our spindle in the cord. But you don't want it too loose either. That's why I like leaving the one end undone, because you just give yourself a little bit of a distance. You don't want it too loose, you don't want it too tight. You simply put the cord in that groove and wrap it around 3 or 4 times, and then you can hang on to it with your hand like that. Okay, so there's our bow drill, there's the cord. Now you want to intertwine this, the bottom, this part, that goes into this divot here. The top is going to be carved out so that we can put it into our handheld handle. You want to intertwine it, the bottom point toward you. Put it over the string and then through the string, and I use my knee to help me snap it. Hopefully you saw that. It'll snap. Then you roll it back to hold on to it with your thumb, like so. Put your foot on the board. You put the divot, you put the end in the divot here. Then you're going to take your block and you're going to put your block in the top, and then you're ready to bow drill. Now, you just want to burn this in. We're going to seat the spindle to the hearthboard, so you gently go back and forth. About 20, 30, 40 times. You're not pushing down hard. I did this wrong. I should be doing this right-handed. My stance is wrong. Ignore my stance. We want to burn this in. See the smoke? There you go. There's the burn-in. I'll show it to you. There's the burn-in. Right there. See that little space to the edge? That's where we're going to put our little caret mark. That's where we're going to put our little cut. That cut will enable the dust to fall down below in a pile and give us our ignition. Okay, so now I'll show you how to cut this notch. Okay, I've got my Leatherman. I just pull out my little saw. Right? Pull out my little saw piece. And then I'm going to cut a caret in this edge of this board. I'll do it this way so that you can see. We're going to cut a notch right into the center of that hole. So I'll do one side real quick for you. Yeah. Real easy with this, yeah. Sorry, you can't see this. You can't see the process. Anyway, there's the beginning of the notch. Let me cut the notch and then I'll show you the notch. Holy cow. Okay, there's the notch. Now I want you to notice something. I'm going to hold my hand up there. Hopefully that'll show it better. A lot of guys like to do a small V. I like to square out that notch, because what that does is it gives it a little home for the ember to sit and grow, right? So I like to make a bigger notch than just a V. I'm trying to find where the V is. Here's one that has a V only. Here's one that has a V only, right there. And the V does not give you as much space as the little square part, and that holds the ember better. I like that a lot. Now let's go find us an ember. Let's go make us an ember. And this time I'll take the correct stance. Gal, how embarrassing. I'm showing you how to and I took the wrong stance. What the burn-in enables us to do is fit the spindle well into the hearthwood, right? So I'm gonna bow drill this right-handed because so many of you are right-handed. I'm left-handed, but I've tried to become ambidextrous with this so that it doesn't matter which way I do this, right or left-handed. In order to do so, I have to move some stuff. So I want to test my string. I want to see which way you take the part that's going to go into the hearthwood and point it towards you and twine it into the string, into the cord. That's not tight enough. So you just unwrap this, pull it a little tighter. So I'm going to do this right-handed. I've been trying to practice getting ambidextrous. I know most of you are right-handed. I'm left-handed, but I've tried to get to where I can do it both directions. The part of the spindle that you're going to spin into the hearthboard on the ground that you're going to make your charcoal down here, you want to point it towards you. You want to intertwine it in the cord like so, and then you want that to come back and snap like that. Then I just then I roll it back and hold it with my thumb so that I can put my hand block on top of it. Put your foot on the hearthboard, take your hand block, put that up in the bearing, and then put this down in where you burned it in. And now you're ready to go. It'll take about 50, 60 strokes, but start off easy. Just start off easy. You're not trying to make an ember yet. Just relax. Go easy. You're going to warm the wood up. That's what you're doing. Then when you start seeing smoke, don't stop. Keep going. Go a little faster, push down a little harder, and get your ember. And then pick off. When you see smoke coming from down there, you've got your ember. And I don't see smoke. Oh yeah, a little bit. I leave the hearthboard alone for a minute or two. A lot of people like to pick it up real quick, tap on it, and let the ember breathe. But this protects it from the wind, and it'll keep going if I've got an ember. I don't know if I have an ember or not. Yeah, it's smoking. It's smoking barely. I just leave it. Let it smoke. You're not in a hurry here. I promise. It almost seems like a contradiction, I know. I promise. Leave it alone. Just let it smoke. It'll grow. It's cooking. See that smoke? It'll grow. It's cooking. It's not going to go out. I promise. It doesn't go out. I'll blow on it here in a minute and I'll show it to you. Just let it sit and grow. You can stand up, stretch, walk around. I've timed these, you guys. I've timed mine anywhere from 5 minutes to 20. Literally, I mean it, 20 minutes. I've had an ember last for 20 minutes. Okay, I've been about 3.5 to 4 minutes now, and you can still see I have not moved the hearth board at all, and it's still smoking. It's in that little square area. That ember will grow if you let it cook. You've got plenty of time. Now you put your bird's nest under this first. I'm just showing you how to get the ember. If you put your bird nest under it, then you can just lift this and it's in the bird nest. That is a bunch of kindling and stuff that you've squished together. Old weeds, cottonwood stuff, dry leaves, old weeds. See that beautiful little ember? Did you see that? Yeah. Yeah, that's worth looking at. That's a good little ember right there. Look at that little baby. Now you can tap it. Be careful. I've actually moved this before and put my ember out. Just basically lift it, tap it a little bit gently, and then you can turn that over and tap that stuff down on it. But there's the ember, man. Look at that thing. That is a great looking ember. Blow on it gently. Then you can transfer that. That's how to do a bow drill fire. Hey, let me tell you about one experiment that I did with my long bow drill. Okay? I went and took my hearthwood, my bottom wood, the one that you grind the spindle into to get the ember. I soaked my hearthwood and I soaked my spindle. I soaked them each for 1 minute so that they were thoroughly wet, right? And then I immediately, now I used my long bow because it gives you so much more leverage. It gives you a longer stroke, which means your spindle is going to be spinning longer, faster, and generating more heat. I immediately locked and loaded, put the spindle down on the hearthwood, and began stroking back and forth, sawing this thing back and forth. I got a burn, I got smoke the first time. Now, I didn't get an ember. I used 80 sawings back and forth, 80, each time with my longbow, because I knew I had to dry out the wood first before I would get an ember, if I could get an ember. It took me 5 times of 80 sawings back and forth, but I got the ember. No kidding. This is great to know. It shows you the mechanical advantage of the bow drill, even if it's been raining. if you're in the mountain and the cloud comes over and it rains for an hour, don't be discouraged. Don't give up and think, oh crap, man, I'm never going to get a fire. I've only got my bow drill. It took me about a half an hour to do that. In a half an hour with completely wet wood, I got the Ember, you guys. That was a great experiment to do. Try that yourself and let me know in the comments how you did. Really, once you get used to doing the technique. I mean, it's awkward. You know, you got to squat down in a weird way and then you got to make a weird motion. So you have to get used to this. You have to practice a little bit. But try it and see how long it takes you. It's entirely possible. Wet wood does not defeat the bow drill. I'm just passing that along so you know. I've never heard anyone else in any other YouTube video say they've actually tried that. I did, and it took me. With the long bow drill, I can get an Ember in just 30 sawings back and forth. Just 30, and there's the Ember. With it totally wet, granted it took 400 sawings and a half an hour instead of 3 minutes, but I got my Ember. That's the point. So I'm just sharing with you some of the advantages. Take advantage of the mechanical advantage with the bow drill if you can. Now, some people will say that when you wrap your arm around your knee to lock your wrist to your knee, that depends on your anatomy. I found just take a comfortable stance. When you're comfortable, then you can bow drill easy enough. And I did that right-handed. I'm ambidextrous. While I'm still talking to you, that coal is still burning. And I'll show you. I mean, it's been about 5 minutes. And typically they last 5 to 7 minutes. I have had several times when I've attempted 3 and 4 times to get a coal and I couldn't, and I finally did. I had such a big pile of sawdust that it burned for 20 minutes. So just step by step. The first day, just get down in your stance and saw back and forth 50 times. You're not trying to even get a coal. You're just getting used to the motion. And then the next day, do it for 60 times. And then the next day, do it for 70 times. It was on my 4th day I got my first Ember, and that is so empowering. It's psychologically empowering. It's physically empowering. It's spectacular to know, hey, I'm improving myself. We are calling forth the fire genie from the wooden Aladdin's lamp. And it's going to grant us the most spectacular wish we want, to save our lives in an emergency. Kind of gives a new meaning to that little bit of a mythological fairy tale story, huh? Yeah. But this is real. It's real magic. It's real natural magic. Using the laws of physics, we can call forth the fire genie. No kidding, man. That's fun stuff, isn't it? Alright, you guys, that's the video. I think that coal is still going, too. Hang on. Thanks for watching my Backyard Professor Rough Country survival videos. It's a lot of fun to do. I've been at least 5 minutes. You can still see that thing is still going. And I've been 5 minutes on it. Easy. And by now you can transfer this to your nest. You could beat a flame by now for sure. I'm just showing you how long this lasts. Still going strong, man. It's amazing. It's almost counterintuitive how long that lasts. You think it's not supposed to last that long, but it does. That is no joke. So, it's still smoking. That's your Backyard Professor video. Thanks for watching. I hope this step-by-step was simple for you to understand. Practice this. It might take you a few attempts before you can even get down and learn how to saw. It's worth it. It took me 4 days. I did it twice a day. Once in the morning for 5 minutes, just simply sawing back and forth. I didn't even care if I got smoke the first day. And then that evening I did it again. Then the next day I got smoke, which is a good sign because that tells you you're doing something right. Then the next day I tried to get the charcoal in the morning and in the night, 5 minutes each time, and I couldn't do it, so I waited till the next day. And the fourth day I quit taking the stance that everybody else told me to take. I got comfortable. And from that point on, I got the Ember. It's that quick and easy. So just, you have to press down a little bit, not too much, and then just get it spinning faster and faster and faster, which means you're sawing back and forth faster and faster and faster. Then you can show your kids, your friends, your family, and teach them how to do it as well. And it becomes a boatload of fun. It's cool. It's fun. A lot funner than striking a match. So, all right, you guys, that coal is still going, man. It really is. So, be good, do well, have fun, make friends, be useful, be happy. Be happy. Remember, we're playing. This is playing. We're learning about Mother Nature because we're a part of Mother Nature, and she will let us call forth the genie that will save our life if we learn how to do it her way, through friction fire. And we know how now. Now it's just up to us to practice. So, thanks you guys. I'll leave you on this note of looking at this coal for just another minute. It's still going. I am so not kidding. Hold on, I'll blow on it for a second. No kidding, it's still going. That's amazing. That is so cool. That is so cool how that works. This is one of those things that you just have to see to believe. That coal is still going. Look at that. I'm well over 5 minutes with it. Sincerely, I'm well over 5 minutes with it. I'm probably more like 7 or 8. But it's still going. When you see smoke, you've got a coal. That's one of the advantages of leaving it in the hearth wood for about 2 minutes to let it grow. Yeah, it's still going, man. No kidding, that thing is still going. You can see that smoking. Look at that. I love it. Fun stuff, you guys. It really is. All right. It is still going. It is still going. Yeah, you can see it red. You don't have to blow hard on them either. Still going, man. That is spectacular, isn't it? Alright, this is me leaving. You guys have fun practicing. Let me know in the comments your experience with this. I would love to talk to you about it some more. If you have any questions, let me know and I'll be happy to answer them.